Shall we begin?
You are now listening to an altogether less fashionable variety of soccer podcast. Broadcasting live from the capital city of Columbus, Ohio. Welcome to
ACES Radio.
I got the new wings with the Zima flavor sauce.
I've given this no thought whatsoever.
Hashtag probably riding cock.
They're in your face. They're a little different. I think it's super cool. I love them. Jamie, you ignorant slut.
Hold on to your butts.
Now, here are your hosts.
Not Morgan Hughes. Rest.
John Zadar. And Darby Snarpus.
No!
Welcome back, edgelords, bezlords, and shitlords. It is time for another week of delicious ACES Radio content, which definitely is not, going to be lacking in any way because we've done a very good job, Darby, of building out show notes for this week.
Oh my gosh, this is the most well planned out, outlined set of show notes that ACES Radio has ever seen. It's in electronic format, so it's not like some caveman typing out and then printing on a half a sheet and folding it in half, landscape style,
and only keeping it to himself.
This is some real shit right here. This is production value.
Man, and I see, actually, that for the first time this week, you have added a third color to the show notes. No longer are they just black and white.
Yes. There is a yellow highlight to remind you when you need to do certain things that you may have nearly forgotten last week.
Which is fantastic, yes, because I did almost forget last week. But we've got it in there, and I've got a good one for today, so I think we'll be all set. That noise you hear in the background is not Shrek, although it does kind of sound like him. Darby, do you want to introduce who's joining us today? Because it isn't Bront, thank God.
Yes, Bront is currently he's locked in quarantine at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia. He has been identified as patient 0 in the coronavirus, and so he won't be joining us. However, longtime second, third, fourth time hired ballerina, not spelled how you think it is joining us today because he wants to talk to us about his kink, and while he's at it, we're going to have him talk in other segments because anything's better than having Brent talk.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Say hello.
Hello, world of ACES Radio.
I mean, world might be overstating the audience.
Maybe a small quadrant of Columbus and a couple other folks.
Census tract, I think, is the level that we're at this point. Yeah.
How many times have you been on now, Jared?
This is the second time as a guest. I was on the infamous first podcast after the Tony Aces tweet around.
So you spoke during the patio bitch session.
Yes, that one. And,
that's right.
And attended a few other ones in between, but obviously this is the second time being an honored guest, I guess, if you will.
We're excited to have such a notorious member of crew internet lore in our midst again.
And hands down, the best member of Big Soccer. That's a low bar. We'll start off by saying that. Perhaps the only tolerable member of Big Soccer. And yes, Mark Sharp, I am including you in that conversation.
Yeah, I'd mostly just post memes and nonsense, so I try to stay away from the really hardcore issues that are ravishing the board at the moment, which is everything but soccer, so...
One can only imagine, and yet doesn't even want to do that.
Yes, it should be no longer called Big Soccer. It's Big Everything But Soccer.
Yeah. Well, with that out of the way, let's just do a quick check-in with quarantines continuing and being officially extended now to at least the 1st of May. How are you guys handling it? How are things going? Darby?
Do you want to go? So yes, because everything happens on Thursdays, today the governor extended the stay-at-home order to the 1st of May. So we now have another month of this sort of stuff to deal with. It's we're hanging in there. I got out to Target the other day, right after the olds were done shopping. Basically, I decided it was time to make a toilet paper run, because that's what the new currency of the world is. And they would not let me in with all the olds, despite clearly being able to see my advanced age. They made me stand out in a line like a goddamn peon. But yeah,
it's interesting. What time? So what time did that run till?
Target does the olds from 8 to 9.
Is that an everyday occurrence?
I think it's Monday through Thursday, I want to say, which I think a lot of stores are doing that.
That's great.
Yeah, it's very nice, and they were doing a good amount of business with that. They had a number of people coming in and out during that time, so they actually had somebody with a security shirt on who was monitoring the door, just so that you knew that they were not fucking around.
How was the stock of toilet paper there? Because I haven't been to the grocery in a while, but I hear that stocks there is still pretty low.
Yeah, it seems like places are very just sort of whatever they have that day. Target had a good amount. I got a 27 pack, so I'm set for like 3 or 4 days now. I poop a lot.
It's like a constant stream. Darby's ass has been referred to as a soft serve before.
Right. But yeah, like even at that point, there were definitely limited numbers of those available. The last time I went to Giant Eagle, they were selling single rolls, which I suppose is better than nothing, but it's only nominally better than nothing. But then Giant Eagle had like hundreds of rolls of paper towels, so it really just seems like most stores are doing whatever they can get their hands on at this point.
Yikes. People are going to have to wipe their ass with paper towels. That's going to leave
which is going to
marks to be
sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to ruin everybody's sewer systems too.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Yikes. Well, good to know that you've got at least enough toilet paper for the next couple days. Jared, how are things around your household? You've got children, unlike Darby and I, so I'm sure that changes the game a bit.
It does quite a bit. There is definitely a huge challenge.
Uh-oh, we're losing you. This is our massive report moment.
My kids are in kindergarten and 3rd grade. Shit. Hold on.
Jared?
Can you hear me now?
Sounds like he's going outside.
Uh-oh.
Hey, no, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, there you
go.
Okay.
Is it better? Sorry.
Yeah, you cleared up now. We lost you. I don't think we got really anything you said before.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, clap. So yeah, definitely with kids, it is very challenging. Both my wife and I are able to work from home, thankfully. My wife actually works from home normally, so it's not much of a change for her. For me, I need to be on phone calls a lot of the day, so we kind of need to do the shifting around of responsibilities while on mute, when we should be listening to a phone call. And then the kids obviously are trying to learn the most that they can with their online classes. But I have a kindergartner and a 3rd grader, and you can imagine that it's mostly YouTube and, everything but what they're supposed to be doing for most of the day. I'm just happy that they're not killing each other at the moment. So every day that I have they are alive after 5 o'clock is considered a win.
I mean, as long as they're avoiding major injuries, right? Because you definitely don't want to have to take anyone to the hospital right now.
We've actually said that multiple times. We're like, we cannot go to the hospital. We don't have time for that. It's a challenge. Hats off to all the teachers who do this day in and day out. Man, they really they should be paid a lot more than what they're probably getting paid today. So.
Amen to that. Yeah. I know I've talked with the Stank Lord himself a few times, and he's dealing with the struggles of continuing his curriculum over the internet, and which is, I imagine, especially difficult as a music teacher. I don't know how you even do it. He said he's got some really cool program that can hear the students as they play, and it can even call out and point out like wrong notes and things like that. So it sounds like they've got some pretty good resources worked out, but I'm sure it's incredibly challenging.
Yeah, my younger kid, he takes Taekwondo lessons normally, and they just went online. And so now that's very interesting that we have to, pull out the iPad. He watches the guy do some moves, and he's got to do them too. And I was kind of surprised how well it's actually working for him. Normally, when he's there, he's like looking at everything else or fighting with the other kids and stuff like that. Here, he just has to kind of pay attention and do that. So, from a student perspective, when you have a teacher in front of you, it actually works pretty well. Now, music, of course, that's got to be a challenge for the Stank Lord, but because you never know if you can hear the right music or the right notes and whatnot. So,
right, yeah, interesting. It's almost like the way you're talking about. It's almost like you're now out of a class environment and into a one-on-one instructing session, which is kind of cool.
Right.
Huh. All right. Well, sounds like everybody's managing well. We've still got quite a ways to go with this thing, it sounds like. So hopefully everybody's able to maintain their sanity. Darby.
Yo.
We have talked about it the last few shows, and now it's kind of starting to sound like a shortened season is almost assuredly going to take place here. I think you have a bit more information on this than I do, but so supposed MLS insiders have said that 0 chance of a full season will be played, and we're likely looking at something in the 20-game range here. Who exactly is saying this stuff, and what are your thoughts on it?
Who's saying this is Brent Miller.
Oh man, if only he was fucking here to do his job.
Yes. Maybe we should skip this. I think he said Stu Holden might have said something about this.
That's what I thought, but I've been scrolling through Stu Holden's Twitter for the last 5 minutes, and I can't find anything.
Yeah. For those of you listening at home, in our show notes, it says, quote, MLS insiders say almost 0 chance of full season, likely number in 20s. Now, when I asked Brent about this, because I said, God damn it, cite your sources, I'm not going with MLS insiders. This is not Massive Report, despite our technological issues. He said that Stu Holden said that. And I said, well, 1, just say Stu Holden, and 2, that's an insider plural, not or
multiple.
That's an insider single, not plural.
Yeah. I've scrolled back to March 10th, and I haven't seen anything. So
yeah. So as you all should be aware, Brent Miller is going to delete his Twitter account after this horrible, awful show note that he inserted into this outline. But that being said, I guess we could talk about a theoretical season where there's 20-ish games.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. In a shortened season with only 20 games, Jared, what do you anticipate that consisting of? Are we talking everybody just make sure they get one game against their conference opponents, and then no cross conference until playoffs? Like, what do you think that is going to look like, and would you be happy with something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a home and home with everybody in your conference should definitely be the priority. Now, obviously, you're going to miss out on a lot of the West Coast teams, which we are already anyways. But I think that's probably going to make the most sense. And then do like the interleague play with when you have the playoffs. Am I going to be disappointed? Well, it's better than no soccer, so I guess I'll take what I can get.
So here's another couple thoughts I want you guys to remark on, and we'll go to you, Darby, once I lay this out. But I think that what Jared said makes sense. But if we're looking at home and home against each conference opponent, then that's 24 games. How are we handling the games that have already been played? Are we do we think we should wipe those from the slate and just basically start fresh with a new season, everyone at 0 points? Because I don't think they can do that.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting situation because some teams will have played potentially 2 in-conference games. The crew played 1 in and 1 out. I suppose I haven't looked at all the schedules, but it could be that some teams maybe even played 2 out-of-conference games early on. So you may have to allow 1 or 2 extra non-conference games just to balance the schedule. I don't know if, teams who lost obviously will be fine with you wiping out those games, but teams who got points or teams who won are presumably going to be much more interested in holding on to those results. If you wipe 3 points off of somebody's schedule just because you had a little imbalance early on, I think that's probably not going to be a great approach. If you wipe 1 game, I think you have to wipe both games at that point, and just act like those 2 never happened, which of course means that the crew would lose 4 points from the first 2 games, which would suck.
So just to clarify, while you were talking, I did a quick check, and at least just from my quick scan of the schedule thus far, both LAFC and Seattle have only played against opposite opponents from the opposite conference.
Okay, so
there
that could be
instances of that. Yeah,
that's a 2-game swing that you'll have to account for. Which that's why people at MLS headquarters are getting paid their salaries. They'll have to work that shit out. The crew fandom and our love of conspiracy theories and Don Garber hates us makes me inclined to think that they might just wipe those early results out. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Even at that. So if we're playing this season, are there more teams in the West than in the East, or are we balanced again currently?
No, we're balanced currently. With 13 in each conference.
Okay, so that's at least one less thing that they have to consider, because I think it was last season we were unbalanced, and that would create a whole host of issues.
So like I said, with the home and home only intra-conference, it would need to be a 24 game season so that you could get 2 games against each opponent. 12 opponents.
I still think that's probably the most likely solution. And in fact, maybe that's some sort of interesting little preview for what the league becomes if it continues to expand and it's no longer feasible to have, interconference games. There's been conversations that maybe the league gets big enough that there's just an East and a West and you don't play at all, or maybe there's some sort of championship game at the end or something. So who knows?
Yeah, so that was going to be my next point is if we go down that route, do you think that that's something that you could be excited about as a preview to the potential future? Because if we look at it now, the league is already at 26 teams. We know there are at least 4 more coming. So we're right now already 6 teams above what like the Premier League and most of the top tiers in other countries play with at that 20. So I think that if we do keep expanding, it makes sense to go to that solely Eastern Conference schedule, and then the 2 conferences just face off in the playoffs. Is that something that you guys think you would like, Jared, or would you prefer to keep some sort of cross-conference play during the regular season?
I would definitely still like to see the cross-conference games happening. I mean, I do enjoy watching some of the West Coast teams come over here and also have the opportunity potentially to do trips out there to see the crew play, like the Rapids or the Galaxy or whatnot. It kind of makes it like a fun vacation if you can wrap that around a crew game or not. So, I mean, I definitely hope that they still continue that. But I do see like the opportunity if you had maybe 32 teams or whatnot, and then you can kind of divide it up like, 2 Premier League type styles. And I know some people are going to jump into like the pro rail conversation, but obviously we won't have that here, but maybe there's some sort of American version of that. But To me, I would rather see us keep it as one league and have the opportunity to travel and see those other players and teams that we probably wouldn't get to see if we're only playing it in our division. Of course, except for the times where we play in the cup, which is hopefully every year.
Yeah, Darby, what are your thoughts? You're a travelsman. You've gone to some away games and whatnot. I mean, how would you feel about not even being given the option to go to half of these MLS cities unless it's a playoff game?
Yeah, I think it would be a loss. And I think there's the risk of introducing some competition between the halves of the league. Like, what happens if it turns out that the East Coast League is doing really well and the West Coast League is suffering economically? You're forcing people to choose. You're competing against your own product. I think it wouldn't be a good move in the long run. I do agree. Travel is fun. As I sit here, the guy who's 0 wins, 0 ties, and 6 losses across all competition in his traveling.
Ouch.
I like going and ruining the crew's chances on the road.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're actually not allowed to go anymore, Darby. Good
Yeah,
God,
keep your
I
ass
didn't
at
know your
home.
record was that bad. Good Lord.
Yes. I have never seen an away game crew goal. In fact, they've all been shutouts.
Yeah, because your dumbass didn't even travel to Cincy.
Yes, I did not go this year. I was doing my part to up the lads, and it clearly worked.
Thank God.
Yeah. So,
Goodness.
yeah, I think it would be a mistake and a disappointment to completely split the leagues. I'm not advocating for it, but I think Garber could see this as almost a trial run for what it would look like if it were to happen.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's a good opportunity to run like a test case experiment here with how that might function and how that might turn out. And like you're saying, are there these underlying issues that maybe we aren't considering right now because they're not staring us in the face, whereas in a season or two they may suddenly pop up. But I'm really intrigued to see what decision they come to, because I think this is like one of the most challenging things that the league has had to face since Save the Crew. So which unprecedented right there. This is our last I think point of conversation on this. We brought it up the last 2 weeks. I want to touch base with you guys again and get updated thoughts on this. We know, like I said at the top of the show, that here in Ohio, the stay-at-home order has been extended to May 1st. I know currently MLS schedule is not set to resume until I think May 10th, but now those timelines are getting a whole lot tighter there. There's certainly a likelihood that even beyond the beginning of May, these things get extended. I know that I've heard from people who are in the industry that things like gyms and such are not necessarily being expected to reopen until August. How much longer and what do you think it would take for the season to get completely canceled? Are we looking at one more postponement from where it's at now? Isn't that enough to kill it? Are we just running out of time to cram these games in? Or what do you think, Jared?
I think they're going to probably try to hang on as long as they can. Like if you see in England, they haven't even canceled that season yet, and we know that they probably likely have at good, if they do like their regular season that they're like ending in May, like 2 or 3 weeks potentially that they're even going to do it, and they're not even calling it quits quite yet. So I think they're going to try to hang on as long as they can. If they don't kick a soccer ball before June, right, I'm going to have a hard time thinking that they're going to be able to get anything meaningful in. But soccer here definitely depends on the gate, the money being made at the gate. So they may think that anything that they can get in might be better than nothing, just to keep them afloat. So that's at least a step in that direction. I'd be curious to see, once they decide, hey, yes, we're going to play and we're going to start to play on this day. What's the scheduling? Like, how does that happen? and like basically like some of these venues that we have share other teams or, you know, have concerts in them and whatnot throughout the summer. Obviously, a lot of those have probably been canceled or postponed, but there's going to be this mad rush of like events starting to fill these places and where the teams may not be like the primary tenant in them. They could potentially be looking at like a fight to try to play a game that they are going to try to have. And I wonder how big of an impact that may have if they're trying to cram in like, you know, like the whole season in about 3 months. Just having open days there could definitely be a problem.
I think it's something to keep in mind. Like, we all know MLS is money hungry, but at what point, like, how far are they willing to go to degrade the like quality of the game and the like legitimacy of the season, Darby, to make what money they can?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting thing because the longer you go, whether or not you cancel the season, fans are going to start wanting some amount of their money back, I think. This is a time where everybody is feeling an economic crunch to some degree or another. I mean, literally millions of people across the country are out of work. You know, we've had if you're on auto pay for your season tickets, we've had one payment come out where there weren't games happening, and here in another like 2 weeks or so, there'll be another payment coming out. You know, the longer you go, the more there's pressure to give fans some amount of money back. If they have to cancel a season altogether, you know, you absolutely have to give the fans the entirety of their money back. I don't know how this affects television deals, for example. I don't know if it's going to hurt their revenue from that. But, you know, we've talked about how the league is a little bit of a pyramid scheme. And if it might just take one bad season to really have them in a bit of trouble. So I think they'll do everything they can. If we're locked in place until May 1st, I assume that means that they wouldn't make an exception for the team going out and practicing. These guys are doing home workouts the best they can, but they're not going to be game fit May 1st, certainly. So I would assume they're going to need a couple of weeks before they could even consider playing a competitive match. So I don't know. I think if they delay it out any further, it's going to be hard to do much of anything without some serious rethinking, because you need enough games that you can have a spread of results for playoff seeding. If you wind up having, you know, a bunch of teams tied with the same number of points because maybe you only got 15 games in, you're going to be going, you know, 4 tiebreakers deep, and somebody's going to be pissed off that they missed the playoffs, which is basically going to be their one last shot at, you know, making some money.
Do you think that?
Sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, yeah, like so. Something that I thought about was potentially, you know, just kind of going completely a different direction and like doing like a World Cup schedule, where maybe they break it down into like groups of 4, you know, play one game against everybody, and just basically like, you know, and then go to like a knockout stage after that. So you can get the whole season done in maybe 2 or 3 months if you spread those games out a little bit. And you still have some semblance of a competition going on, but maybe in the, you know, when it's all said and done, that this is just kind of like an asterisk year for everybody. There's no official cup champion, there's no supporter shield or anything like that, but this is just kind of an alternative so that folks can still watch some soccer and be able to do things. But it's everybody kind of knows it's kind of, yeah, this is because of what happened and whatnot, but we're going to still try to pull this together, like some sort of alternative format like that.
Yeah, I like that idea. I've thought for quite some time that a group set up for playoffs could be really interesting, and so I wouldn't be opposed to. I mean, if we're doing things so weird and crazy as is already, like, why not try something a little bit wackier, just so you can like get it out there in the world and actually run through it and see if it would work. I mean, while we're on the topic of crazy things, maybe depending on how the season plays out, maybe they don't do like, maybe they don't award a supporters shield. Maybe they don't even award an MLS Cup this season. Maybe they just play out the games and they don't do like a playoff format. They just do an extended season into the time when playoffs normally would run. And I don't know what happens. I think anything is almost as likely as anything else. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing some of these crazier ideas. If like I said, if shit is already blown up, why not try some wild stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's going to be an asterisk next to this season no matter what happens. I know some of the European leagues are doing like, oh, there's going to be no relegation this season just because of everything that's happening. So probably every sport that's having to deal with this is going to affect baseball, one would assume. Maybe some of the other like fall sports will be able to avoid it, but this is definitely a time you can try out some weird stuff because everybody knows that it's not going to be like it was. And, I guess if they do something resembling an MLS Cup, you can put an asterisk next to it. But if the Crew wins, I'm going to celebrate like it's a legit and normal fucking cup.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Everyone, there's going to be 25 teams that say that doesn't count, and one team's fans who are like, fuck you. It totally does count.
Yeah, exactly. And if you win that last game and you get to hoist the trophy, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But yeah, I'm interested to see what they decide. I'm interested to see how much longer they hold off before starting to make some announcements, because I think that the point about refunds is a very fair one. I mean, season tickets especially are not cheap. That's a chunk of a rent payment. It's a trip to the grocery store. It's money that people are gonna, if they're not already desperately in need of, gonna potentially really like to get their hands back on in the months to come. But some good conversation there. We'll definitely be revisiting that on a weekly basis just to stay current on news regarding that. But let's move on here to the big highlight of the past weekend, I guess, for Crew fans, but for Darby especially here. I don't know much about this because I didn't participate, but I know, Darby, that you were involved, and you also man, you really stretched your knowledge base there, and were looking like a real young for a few minutes there, and set up a stream and streamed your games. Tell us about the Nordeca FIFA tournament and how that went, how your personal experience was, and how the tournament went as a whole.
Sure. So it was definitely an interesting experience. It was initially a bit of a challenge. I think the person who was running it on behalf of the Nordec, who's the comms guy whose name escapes me, was absolutely doing the best he can. From what I understand, there were some people who like maybe offered to help out with logistics and then bailed, which, I mean, we were in Save the Crew. Yeah, that sounds very much how these sorts of things work. But it all got worked out. Basically, there was an issue relating to tiebreakers and being able to not finish a game in a tie. But it didn't wind up affecting my games at all. The first game I played...
So let me get this straight real quick. The tournament allowed for games to end in ties. They didn't push you to overtime and then eventually penalty kicks?
So FIFA has a pretty glaring lack in that you can't play a one-off online game against a friend that has a definitive end. It has these online seasons where you play a best of 5 games. So it will absolutely let any one of those games end in a tie, which obviously a tournament like this can't really allow for. So basically it just became, winner takes all, essentially, in a game. If you tie, you play again.
Okay.
Until somebody wins, which, since games are 6-minute halves.
So you guys would just play, the game ends in a draw, you start another game and play each other again until someone wins?
Exactly.
I mean, I guess there are certainly worse ways to handle that, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it was a good on the fly adjustment, given that they didn't realize this was going to be a barrier. Apparently, on a Switch, if you're playing Nintendo Switch, it must have a different setup, because I think I heard that you can get a single online game and have a tiebreaker, but I don't know. It all worked out in the end. Everybody was able to do their thing. So it went off, I think, about as well. It was also coordinated with, I think, with one of the New York supporter groups. Hudson River Blue was involved with it as well. So given that there were two entities coordinating jointly, I think you can't be too upset about, pulling something like this off, because there were dozens and dozens of people who were signed up.
Nice. I guess I missed the fact that there was a second group of fans that were involved. I thought it was just a crew thing, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
Jared, did you tune into this? Did you play in it? Were you involved in any way?
Unfortunately, my only involvement was reading the posts on Big Soccer. I'm not a big online gamer at the moment, just due to you would think I would have a whole bunch of free time on my hands, since we're not doing jack squat around here. But, with little ones around, they seem to occupy most of my time.
Well,
but
real quick, before we go back to Darby for more info about it, what's the take on this on Big Soccer? Are they breaking down games?
It's funny. There's a little bit of everything, right? There was I think there was a few Big Soccer posters in the tournament, and while it was going on, there was a play-by-play, somewhat going on, similar to when a crew game's going or being played. So that was kind of nice to see. It kind of felt a little bit like the crew were playing to some degree. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's still, but.
Understandable. Yeah. Well, at least hopefully it was able to provide at least some little bit of entertainment to some people here. But Darby, let's go back to you. You played in the tournament.
I did.
It sounds like you have a lot of firsthand experience with the drawing system. So that leads me to believe that you drew a game at least once.
Yeah. So Dave and I actually popped on beforehand to kind of work things out.
That's Dave Edinger, right?
Dave Edinger, yeah.
You guys got paired against each other.
Yes, in one of two people whose names I instantly recognized in the draw. Basically, him and Charles were the only ones who I recognized on site. And yeah, we drew each other. So a little earlier, we were like, okay, let's figure out how to do this online thing. So we played a couple of matches, and we actually drew in those early matches.
These practice matches?
Yeah, practice matches.
Because you had either of you ever played actually online before against opponents? Or no?
I played a handful in the seasons mode, where you have 10 games or whatever to get promoted to the next level.
Okay.
But I tend to thoroughly get my ass kicked, so I don't delve very far into that. But yeah, we were just trying to kind of work out how is this actually going to work? So Dave and I played a couple practice games in advance of the actual event. So we had a little bit of familiarity with what the approaches were going to be. So when game time came, it was actually, I did set up the Twitch stream. There were, I think, maybe 15 people watching at its peak. So, I mean, I got some serious eyeballs on this match. That was my first ever competitive Twitch stream. I did a practice run when I was just playing against the PlayStation one time, but it was
nice.
It was a hard fought match. I was playing Borussia Dortmund. Dave was playing Liverpool because he's one of those guys who just has to take the best team. How dare he? I had never played in a 3-4-3 formation before, so that was kind of an interesting thing. I picked Dortmund basically because black and gold, and they seemed like they were a pretty solid team in the rankings. Let's see, we went into halftime tied at 0. with plenty of missed opportunities and bad passes. If you were playing a drinking game, watching this game where like you took a drink anytime somebody did something dumb, you were probably dead at halftime. So #rest.
So wait, okay, so sounds like there was a lot of unexpected things going on here. Were there any rules as far as like who you were allowed to play as? Like, was it any 5 stars or fair game? Like,
yeah, you could play whatever team you wanted. So had I just like gone up against somebody I didn't know, I was thinking like I'd play some random ass team from Turkey or something just to have fun with it. But when I saw I was playing Dave, I'm like, okay, let's make this an actual game. But yeah, any team was completely fair. Obviously, if you played the crew, you were going to have a bit of a competitive disadvantage. From what I could tell, everybody was playing PSV as their team, it has seemed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of disappointing. I was kind of hoping it was either going to be like MLS only or like maybe just crew only, and you had everyone was the crew and you had to set your own lineup and formation how you wanted. Like, free for all sounds like it's not necessarily as exciting, but I can understand why it'd just be easier.
Yeah, I think there really were a lot of people signed up for this. So I think it would have been pretty tough to successfully pull off a set of rules where like you can be this team but not that team. I think they just kind of had to leave it pretty open.
Yeah. Well, first time doing it, maybe they'll do another one and learn from the first one and change some things.
Yeah. It was PSG, not PSV. Sorry about that. Yeah, everybody was playing Paris Saint-Germain.
Ah, okay. That's the Neymar club, I think, isn't it?
Yes, the Neymar, Mbappe. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dave and I played. We were tied at 0 at halftime. We were tied at 0 at the end of regulation. Just back and forth opportunities, but nothing was going in. There were 2 minutes of stoppage time added. In the 93rd minute, my guy, who I have no idea who the player was because I don't actually know any of the Dortmund players, went in on goal, took a shot from just a terrible, awful angle. It went off the keeper and went in. It just like not even a good, like it just sort of dribbled into the corner. It was the most ridiculous, awful, anticlimactic goal you've ever seen in your life. I in no way earned a victory. Dave outplayed me during the entire game. He was absolutely the better player. But much like how it works in soccer, sometimes you just get.
What a gracious winner you are, Drabby. So nice of you to commend your opponent like that.
Yeah.
You can shit on him. It's fine. He doesn't listen.
I'm just happy that he so recently got electricity and an internet connection that he could actually play online.
I was going to say, I'm surprised he could even get on the internet from Amish country up there.
Yeah. I think normally when, what he calls FIFA Online is he plays foosball and he has Olivia take pictures of it and then he mails the pictures to whoever he's playing.
Oh my God. In the editor's defense, I will say that in the Zoom video things that I've done, their video feed looks a lot better than the Stankies, and they live in Dublin, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well, nobody's competing for bandwidth in Amish country. They're the only ones.
That's fair. That's a good point. Yeah. All right. What else we got on here? We got a Campinas no victory note here. How did he do? Did he win the whole tournament or just his games?
No, he won his first game as well. I don't know the score, but he was able to advance. He was basically in the me and Dave pool where he was just looking like he's like, if I play you, maybe I can win. Otherwise, that's it. But he managed a victory in his first game. We both lost in our second games. I lost 5-0. He lost 4-1. He also played Paris Saint-Germain. I think, we came up pretty quickly against actual players. Like in my second game, I tried talking to the guy and it was just silence because he was clearly focused on beating my ass.
So you can talk to your opponent while you're playing?
Yes. Yeah. There's a microphone. So you can shit talk or whatever. So Dave and I were trying to give some running commentary as we were playing, which is totally distracting to me because I cannot do two things at once. It was basically like, I think he'd throw something out just so that I'd have to respond and not pay attention to the game. It's like, I'm going in on goal. So what do you think about
Jesus?
Yeah, but
some good. I like the extra little level of tactics and kind of showmanship about it. I dig it.
Yeah. So we both died out in the second round. Skeets McTaz is still in. They let him in. Apparently they decided they wanted a ringer in this fucking thing. So he's going to be in the semifinals, which are being played on Saturday in the PlayStation semifinals, because each console has its own bracket, obviously.
Yeah. So how did he do? Did he win the whole thing or no? It's not over.
Semifinals. So they'll be determining it this weekend. So.
Okay. Do you know if there are plans to stream those games? No?
I think he streamed his first game. They were all playing simultaneously, so he was obviously stealing all of my viewers at that point.
Of course.
Yeah. But
so we could tune into the Skeets McTaz show then if you want to watch the semifinals tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Saturday. What time?
8 p.m.
8 p.m.
So
Okay.
go
ahead, Jared.
So if he loses, does whoever win take his place on the roster then?
Oh my God!
Ooh, that's true. That's a lot of pressure there.
I think we should tweet that to him and ask and say, "What's the prize here for the person who beats him should get a prize, even if they don't win the whole thing."
Oh, for sure, yeah. Yeah, okay. A prize from the Nordeck and a prize from the front office, I think, would be most appropriate.
Yeah, I love it. So we'll just take Skeets McTaz's job from him. No big deal. Okay. Any last thoughts on the tournament, Darby? Would you play again?
Yeah, I would. It was fun. Even though the second game I got my ass beat, that was really what I was expecting the first game. It's just I really appreciate that that they set this up. It's a fun way to have a little interactive soccer action in our lives in a time where not a lot of that's going on. So it was a fun experience. Maybe if they have more time to set it up, as long as you can prevent liars, maybe you have more like a rookies league and then an advanced players league or something. But yeah, I guess you've got a lot of time. They could, in theory, set up multiple tournaments. If they're, masochistic enough to try and take that on.
It'd be exciting. I mean, I don't see any reason why this shouldn't become like a yearly thing, and even maybe it's even something you do twice a year, once in the off season and once like around mid-season of the actual, in the summertime or something.
Yeah, sure.
That could be pretty fun. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we're going to move on here, but I am going to, real quick, I received word that our third person has finally arrived, so I'm going to pull him in here and he's going to join us. So it might be a weird noise here. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll bring in Bront in. And okay, there he is. Brent, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness. Welcome to the show. You're only an hour and 15 minutes late.
Yeah, well, very busy, very important person, John.
Oh my God. What a snobby essential worker you've become. You with your paychecks and your high probability of catching the virus.
Showing up an hour late, that's like season 4 Zidar kind of behavior. Who do you think you are?
How dare you? How dare you take my role? Okay, well, you got here just in time. We're going to play a little game here that Darby, I think this was Darby's idea, so I'll let you kind of run it here, Darby.
Yeah, given a lack of any sort of soccer-related content to talk about here recently, I thought we could, everybody's already done that. Who do you want to be quarantined with as a player thing? Which obviously, Josh Williams is the only correct answer to that question, and anybody else who's wrong can just go to hell and die. That maybe like once a week we'd throw out just something that we could talk about, some sort of superlative where we can discuss who we think is the best in a certain category. And my random ass example for this week that wound up being the actual content is best hair category. So we have a team with a long and illustrious history, much like Frankie's hair, long and illustrious. So I thought we could do two categories here. We could do the all-time best hair among crew players, and then the quarantine edition, which would indicate like the person who just looked like in their everyday getup like they had been quarantined for a month and had no access to the barbershop.
Okay, so we're doing all-time best hair and then all-time kind of almost worst hair. Is that what I'm understanding?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Do you want to go first, or would you prefer one of us do it? Since you've had time to think about it, I assume you've got your selections made, but...
Sure. We can do that.
Okay.
My all-time favorite best hair, I will say, which technically might go into the quarantine edition, but I'm going all-time because I think it's an all-time best, is Tommy Heineman. I really enjoyed the Captain Caveman look. I feel like that hair was absolutely the source of his superpowers, and anytime he got a trim, it instantly affected his performance. So Tommy Heineman's my all-time. My quarantine guy it's a very specific look. So when Higuain joined the team, you may remember he actually had hair, and it was buzzed relatively short, but he had a mostly full head of hair, and he was pretty clean shaven. Over time, the hairline started to recede a little bit, like it does with all of us as we get older. And I realized at one point, a couple seasons in, so he shaved his head, but he would also have those sporadic I don't give a fuck time periods on the field where like he was just kind of checked out, and it reflected on his head.
Yeah.
Because he would stop shaving as regularly. So he'd have sort of a dark friar tuck ring around his head where it just like, you'd have a week or two of growth there. And then he started growing out the raggedy, patchy ass beard, like not well trimmed. So I feel like that time period of Higuain was the quarantine edition, because that's basically what I have going on at this point. Like, I haven't done anything to the top of my head in weeks, and I haven't shaved in 3 weeks, and so it's the don't give a fuck look.
Yeah, we need a Darby facial hair update. I feel like it's been a few days since we last saw you posted something on Twitter. When did you do that? Was that Monday or?
It might have been. And you should realize that from day to day, there is literally no change in my appearance. Once a week is probably more than sufficient, but I'll see if I can do an update here soon. So those are my votes. Tommy Heineman and don't give a fuck Higuain. So how about you, Jared? What are your votes here? I realize you hadn't really seen this before the episode started.
No, I mean I'll take some of the easy pickings here, and the boobs definitely gets my vote for the best hair. I think he's got a strong. I think if we see a little more of Vito this season, I think he can maybe overtake him with the man bun. I think just the overall look of Vito, obviously, but then tap on that man bun just kind of gives that don't mess with me look. But still, if we're going to go all time at the moment, Boubacar definitely has that. I know that's always the fan favorite, so I'll go easy there. Quarantine edition, I'm going to go a slightly different direction, and I'm going to say like Jacob Thomas or Renteria, any of our bald, like just smooth shaved individuals. And the reason why I say that is because obviously since we've closed down all the barbershops and hair salons in Ohio, if you're like me and maybe you didn't get a haircut right when you were supposed to, we're all looking a pretty, kind of our own caveman-like look going on right now. And those guys who have the fortunate ability to just take the straight razor and take a little bit off the top, I mean, they have the quarantine version of the haircut down pat. So I know that's a little bit different than what you were thinking, but I think if I'm going to be trapped in a quarantine room with somebody, I want someone that can keep that shit up a little bit. So any of those guys who had the chrome dome going definitely gets my vote.
No, I think that's a smart pick. I have a weirdly shaped head, so like I would totally be the guy who just shaves his head when he goes bald enough. But I have a very pointy back of my head, so I don't think I'm going to be any better off. So I definitely respect those who have a good-looking shaved head.
Yeah, so like anybody out there that knows any of the like the black market barbers out there that are still doing things on the side, hook me up, because man, I got some cowlick action going on right now in the back, and this is I cannot video conference at all, so.
I know a guy, his name's Morgan. I'll send you his number.
Oh, okay. I'll just shave my head.
Oh, man.
I'll just shave my head.
I like it. I'll go next, and we'll give Brent the honor of last place since he was the last to arrive. I'm going to go probably with some unexpected picks here. For all-time best hair, I'm going to go specifically with Dom Maduro's pizza haircut, because Jesus Christ, if you can't respect someone willing to shill to that level, then I don't even know what we're doing here. This is Aces Radio, for Christ's sakes. You got to respect the game, okay? The man literally had a pizza on his head. He ran over to the sideline, ate a pizza. I don't know how much money Papa John's paid him for that, but I would be shocked if there wasn't some sort of backroom dealing going on there. So that's my all-time. It's definitely far and away just the most memorable. And then for my quarantine edition, I can't decide who I like more here, but they're both championship boys. They're both long gone lads, but they're massive champions. And it's Eddie Gavin, the wild bearded woodsman, and Jason Gary, who always just kind of looked like he had just climbed out of a boat after 5 to 7 days of fishing. I don't know what was going on with Jason Gary's hair or facial hair, but it was always just he looked like the kind of kid who had finally hit puberty but was too embarrassed to ask to be shown how to shave, and so he just kind of kept growing it out, and no one offered to help him learn, and so he just always kind of looked raggedy. And Eddie Gavin, of course, looked like he was literally half frickin' Sasquatch with that beard. So I think those guys, I expect there's going to be a lot of people emerging into the daylight when this is over with looks not too dissimilar from theirs.
Nice. All right, Brent, what about you? What you got?
All right. Well, both of my answers were actually just taken, so thanks for that, guys. I'll try to come up with some different ones on the fly.
That's what happens when you show up late, Bront.
No, John, no. So first of all, for the greatest all-time, the answer is obviously Lawless Abubakar. Anything else is just wrong. But since Jared already said that, I will go with Kyle Martino and his flawless hair. And then for the quarantine edition, Eddie Gavin is absolutely the right choice. I'm actually just going to stick with that because I can't think of anybody that comes anywhere close.
Do you want to do a quick third category, Bront, of who you think would best wear a bucket?
No, I don't, John. You guys feel free.
I just wanted to see. I just checking. It's fine if you don't want to. It's not a big deal. All right. Well, I think that was fun. I like that, Darby. So we're going to have a different topic each week here then? Is that the plan moving forward?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Give us something to talk about in this segment.
Awesome. Well, here's the deal. So I don't want to give away what the future one is going to be, but if you guys want to email in your thoughts about this week's best hair options, we'll read those next week before we get into the new topic, and we'll just do that every week too. How's that sound?
That sounds great. What's the email address they should send that to, John?
Oh my God, Darby, what a fabulous question. The email address is new. It's a new
Team
email
at
here.
savethecrew.com.
No. God damn it, Brent. Don't make me server mute you. Do not send anything to Darby. Do you even check that anymore, Darby? You shouldn't.
It's still set up on my phone, so I get notifications whenever there's spam showing up there.
Whenever Brent signs you up for like backyard boys meet and greets or whatever they're called. Yeah, so the email is acesradiopodcast@gmail.com. So shoot your thoughts there. It'll be kind of like almost like a secondary hot take segment, if you will. And with that out of the way, we will move on here to our final part of segment 1 here, which is of course going to be the man balls. Let's start with you, Jared, since you're the guest today. You get the honor of going first, which I'm sure you're just going to be totally prepared for and love.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned before, I got to give a man ball to anybody who's silly enough to sign up to teach our kids on a regular basis. My hat's off to you as trying to fill in for this as a teacher / babysitter / just whatever my kids are doing. Bless you all, because this has been a real eye opener for the past 2 or 3 weeks here at the Ballerina household. Second man ball, I would definitely have to say goes to the healthcare workers out there. Obviously looking at the tweets and the posts on the different forms of social media, just the what they're going through and what they have to continue to go into every single day. Definitely want to make sure that they, if I can give them a man ball, that doesn't seem like it's enough, but definitely appreciate everything that they're doing. And, hopefully when this is all over, they get a big time off and plenty of accolades and, whatever else is coming to you. So my form is just that one man ball. So.
Very nice. Very nice. Very appreciative. Very humble and gracious. I respect it. I like it. Bront, let's go to you. Who are your man balls for this week?
First man ball this week is going to go to my boy, Steps FC. I hope you're feeling better, dude. Second man ball is...
Yeah, let me touch on that real fast. Does Steps have the virus? Am I misunderstanding like the things I've seen on Twitter?
So he hasn't been tested for it, but he is being treated as if he has it because he has the same symptoms.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And he can't get he's been having some trouble breathing and can't get a doctor to see him. So not a great situation. So hopefully he's found a way to get some help and hope he's doing better.
Yeah, good God, man. Hopefully, get healthy soon.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
You're good. Second man ball. I'll give it to all of you shitlords for carrying the show in my absence. I know how difficult that is for you. So congrats on that.
Jesus Christ, I hate Brent. All right, Darby. Let's go ahead and move off that as quickly as we possibly can.
All right. My first man ball this week is going to go to Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. He does not belong to the party that I generally support. He is not the person that I voted for governor. But he is doing a hell of a job trying to run a state and keep a state healthy in the most unimaginable situation possible, to the point that he's getting national and international attention for the way that he's handling things. I saw today Ohio ranks 48th out of the 50 states and DC for public health funding per capita. So by all means, we should probably be in a much worse situation than we are. And he's doing a really fantastic job of keeping people informed, about staying level-headed, about avoiding a lot of the politics that have been a part of what certain other unnamed elected officials have been doing over the past few weeks. So I want to go ahead and give Governor DeWine credit. He started off with helping us save the team, and now he's saving lives. So good job, my friend. My second man ball, oh shit, I had one, and then I forgot about what I was talking about the first one.
It was probably going to go to me for a third week in a row.
You would think that, and yet, I know what it was. Fuck you, Bront. It was definitely not you. Storm Large. She is a singer. She is one of the leads of the band Pink Martini. Way back in the day, I became aware of her because she was on a reality competition show called Rockstar Supernova. And she was fucking awesome. She didn't win, but she was on the show. She has been doing daily Instagram live performances, like just a half hour or so, but playing a couple of songs, answering fan questions, talking, stuff like that. It's a really nice thing that I think a lot of musicians are getting on board for to some degree or another, like making little home-based performances, but she's literally been doing them every day. And even if it's just a half hour, like that's still some work and that's still some effort. And I appreciate entertainers who are doing that when they're not financially benefiting from it. So thank you for doing your part to kind of make the world a more normal and enjoyable place.
All right, sounds good. Mine will be real quick here. I was going to throw one to the governor, but you've covered that, so I'll throw one to the other equally important member of the team that's leading the healthcare offensive here in Ohio, and that's Dr. Amy Acton. She's doing a killer job, and that video that they put together for her, I think that was Monday for Doctor Appreciation Day, was super adorable and awesome, and just like the beginning of the applause and thanks and like gratitude that we as a state need to show to her for leading us through these times. So that's my first one. My second one is going to just go to Skeets McTaz for being willing to join this amateur tournament and potentially tank his career by losing to someone like Drabby. A lot of respect there, buddy. I don't know why you would be willing to throw it all away, but
he was in no danger of losing to me.
Okay, but there's other people. I'm just saying, like, one lost to one of these drunk hooligans, and like all respect out the window. So, really, really taking a gamble there with your career, Skeets, which it's probably not very stable to begin with. So, those are my two man balls, and I think that finally brings us to the end of segment one. It's actually a really long segment one this week, so. Thanks for joining us here, and we will return in segment two. Jared's going to share his kink with us this week, and I'm looking forward to hearing about that, hearing about how it's been helping him stay busy and stay occupied and entertained during the quarantine. So stick around, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to ACES Radio segment 2 here. Before we dive into the what's your kink thing, it got me thinking, the hair thing, Darby. With all this talk of cutting hair, if I were to sneak into a certain player's house, I won't name names here, but someone maybe best known as Angel Eyes, and just like snip a lock of his hair, and I were to get caught doing that, that would be awful, don't you think? Don't you think that would just be terrible?
It might be. It depends. I mean, you might be into being caught in that context, even, but it might not be great for you legally.
Right, legally, I think it probably would be awful. I don't know what all it would account for. I mean, breaking and entering, surely. Does stealing hair count as theft? I don't know. Let's just not find out, shall we? But if I did do something like that, which I would never do, there is someone that I could call, and I just want to bring them up again because they're just like a great guys. Brian Jones, the law offices of Brian Jones, to be specific. Their team, I'm sure, could get me off on this crime that I absolutely would never commit. Okay, Josh Williams, if you're listening, I would never do this to you. I love you too much. And you could just like respond to my messages and give me the hair voluntarily, and this won't happen. So, I mean, if you want to do it that way, we can do it that way, or I can sneak in. It's up to you. But if you want to sneak in and steal hair from your favorite player and you happen to get caught, I would highly suggest that you contact Brian Jones at you can reach them at the law offices of brianjones.com. And I'm not spelling it out this week, Brent, okay? I think everybody knows now. I'm leaving the G off because I'm still confused about whether there's a G. But they're definitely the people to go to if you get caught stealing professional soccer players' hair. And I think we can all agree on that. Let's move on to everyone's favorite new segment for this season, which I think is undisputed. What's your kink? Which, would be cool if we had like an intro song right now, but we don't. So I'm just going to keep talking awkwardly, and then I'm going to kick it to Darby. Fantastic, Darby. I love it.
Nope, that's worse.
We can edit that out in post. It's fine.
All right. Well, as usual, I'm going to kick it to you, Darby, because this was kind of your brainchild. I'll let you run this little bit. But you're going to talk to Jared today about his kink, which is, I think, a thing that I'm also passionate about. I know you're passionate about, Darby. I don't know a lot about Brent, and I don't want to, so I don't know if he's passionate about this, but maybe. So let's find out.
Yeah, the nice thing is this is the kind of kink that if a lot of people are into it, you can all be into it together. So, yeah, Jared, why don't you tell us about your kink and what you'd like to talk about on today's episode?
Yeah, so my kink is board gaming. So people ask, what is that? Is that just playing the Life and Monopoly and whatnot? There is some of that, but there's also a whole world of other board games that are out there. I think we've talked about a few of them on the show in the past, but it's fairly deep and fairly wide. So Dave Greeley would not be appreciative of the board gaming community because we're much more than an inch deep. But yeah, no, the amount of games that are out there is quite immense. And now is like the perfect time to play them because there's really nothing else to do after the sun goes down but go play some board games.
Yeah, for sure. So we were talking about this a little bit before the show started. Describe for us your library of games, because that is the technical term when one has a collection of board games. It's a library. So talk about yours a little bit.
Yeah, so I started playing pretty heavily in 2008. So I've had about 12 years of time to accumulate these games. And I play with our group that it's about 6 to 8 people that we meet, twice a month or so, sometimes more. So I'm kind of in the middle, maybe like the lower middle of like the amount of games that I've accumulated over these 12 years. And I just did a quick check before today just to see where I was at, and I'm at 164. That's not just individual games; those are some expansions. So those expansions would be, so you bought like the regular game, right? And then maybe a year later, the company comes out with more of the game, right? Maybe an extra board or some pieces or some rules that they maybe not included in the base game. So they came out with an expansion. So that includes those. So some people don't count those or not. I'm probably a little over 100, I would say, if we just counted base games. But so yeah, it's a pretty sizable collection. But there's definitely, if you go out to some of the social media circles and board gaming community, I mean, many people would just laugh at like that's a very small, puny size. There's guys that have thousands and thousands of. And they continue to grow. And I'm nowhere in that league by any means. I'm really restricted by the shelf space that I have. So I have a certain size shelf, and basically I have enough board games to fit that shelf. And if I buy a new board game, I have to go look at my other games and say which one of these to come off. And so it's kind of like a Survivor series, if you will. So I have to like not love a certain game. And I've gotten rid of a lot of games that I like, hey, this is actually a fun game and I would like to play it again, but kind of like this other game a lot better. So it's a little calling action going on there.
I think it's crazy that you're saying that your collection could be considered small by certain people, because I'm pretty into board games too, but I think I don't even know if I own a double digit amount of them. So the fact that you have 100 base games and then expansions and stuff too is just like, that sounds so awesome. Do you have, you said you've got the shelf, do you have like a specific room or an area of the house where like this is the gaming area and it's like got a table for playing and stuff like that? Are you like that hardcore into it where you've got like one of those nice gaming tables, or what's your setup like?
So I don't, in that regard. I do have a certain room where all my games are. It's the basement. But it's set up real nice, but usually when we play, I'll bring it up to the kitchen table, and so it's nice and open, and people have room to get up and walk around if they need be, because some of these games can take 1, 2, 3 hours at a time, so you want to be able to have some room to get up and stretch your legs or get a drink or some food or something like that in the middle. So definitely that's where we typically play.
So in these 100 or so games, that's a pretty significant collection. Like, how do you find new games? Where do you go? Are you going to physical stores? Are you looking on Amazon? Are you doing Kickstarters? How do you go about finding the next game that you want to own?
So for me, there's a site called Board Game Geek. That's kind of like the central hub, right? Of where that's like the big soccer, if you will, of generic crappy soccer talk, but this is like actual good content for board games. That's really the end all be all of the board gaming community. They have a listing of every single board game in print, at least that that most of us know of, and people can talk about it, post things on there for sale, reviews or questions about the rules. A lot of the people who design these games are active there. So typically if you have a question on like a game, like, hey, what happens in this scenario? The guy who actually created the game will pop on there and say, oh, well, it's supposed to be X, Y, and Z. So, that's great. So that's typically the center of where you're going to go. Obviously, they have a news section there, so people like to share different bits and pieces as far as what's coming out. As far as where I go to actually buy my games, it's an avenue of different places. There's, Kickstarter is definitely one. That's like the hot new place to get things. That's where companies like to tease like they're really new games that are coming out. So, and they'll typically do things where, hey, if you buy now and within this period of time, you'll get these extra figures or rules or expansions or something like that you won't be able to get anywhere else. So it kind of entices you to jump on that like right now. A lot of times you'll buy something and then immediately like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. I'm not sure how many of my friends have done that. They're like, oh, I just backed this game and I don't want it anymore, because it usually takes a few months before it gets to you. And then by then you're like, wait, I don't really want this. But so that typically happens, but that's really just one avenue that you're able to get games. Amazon has lately became a really good seller of board games. So if you want to get some free shipping and whatnot, a lot of them. The local friendly gaming store, of course, is always my favorite, because there's something about going there and actually seeing the game, and sometimes they'll even have them out to play. You can ask the guy working behind the counter what he thinks about the game, and more often than not, they have played it or they at least know enough about it to say, oh yeah, it's a good one or bad one, and they're usually pretty upfront with that. So that's nice. They're usually a little more expensive, but I like to support them, and especially they do give you that service where you can actually pick up and hold it and flip it around, look at it, maybe even open it up to be able to decide if that's something that you actually want. Because some games are cheap, $20-$30, but sometimes they can get really expensive. You're talking like $100, $130, $150 for some of these games. So you definitely don't want to be like making a mistake on like, hey, I just dropped $150 on a game and I've only played it once, and that's a big mistake. So
sure. So it sounds like you sort of just find them all over the place, but you do like going to supporting your local board game store for for the actual purchasing at times, because I know a lot of them they'll order games for you if they don't have them on the shelf.
Yeah, definitely. Like they're usually pretty flexible, and that's like one of the nice things about the hobby. It's like the people are very nice. So if you just sit down and talk to them for a little bit and tell them what you want, what you're interested in, they can usually say, well, you probably want this game, or go look over here to buy this game, type of thing.
Sure. So, do you play any online versions of any of the games that you own?
I don't a whole lot. I do play a little bit on the iOS, like on my phone. I do have several of the board games there. So basically, and the good thing about that is it's usually fast, right? You can play a game. Maybe it takes you 20, 30 minutes if it's on the table. If it's on your phone, you can maybe play it in 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes or so. So, we always joke that, in the time it takes you to sit on the throne and do your business, you can maybe get 2 games, a Ticket to Ride in or something like that. Maybe 3 if you ate some burritos the night before. So, I mean, that's kind of nice because you don't have to put the game away or set it up. It just does it all for you. And there's some really good apps out there now. And I know Steam right now has a big sale on all their Asmodee games. That's a company that kind of owns probably like 80% of the board games at the moment. And they've just completely slashed all their online prices, so if you're into that, this is a great time to get into the online gaming version of it. But as far as like console games, like when when you're saying like FIFA and whatnot, we kind of stray a little bit away from those versions. I know Switch has a lot of board games on it now, but just with all that going on, it's something to have like the actual physical copy still kind of like makes it. That's like the best part, right? Ripping open that shrink, punching out all the bits, and like that fresh cardboard smell. That's just really, it's like Darby on horses, right? Just you can't control it.
Son of a bitch.
I'm a big board game guy, and I don't own very many, like I said earlier, but the ones I do own are always like, that is one of the parts about it that I love the most, and what really attracts me is just like the physical aspect of it, and just like the beauty of the pieces and just the work that they put into the art and designing of the game, and just like the characters that you're either playing as, or the board art, or the packaging is just like, I'm just like obviously I'm a design and art slut when it comes to things like that, and so that's typically what draws me into games. But I haven't played a whole lot of internet or like online digital versions of board games. So
like the art thing is definitely pretty cool, because one of my friends, he's really big into painting like the pieces that come in the games. And like there's some games that, like what you were saying, like they have some very detailed like figures that come with it. So he's got like the magnifying glass and like the real tiny brushes, and he spends a lot of time on each figure. But when they come out, like it's like a whole new game when you play it. Like, it's like you got this big, blue monster guy with like skulls hanging from him or something like that. And you're like, oh, that's cool. And he's like, when he's all gray, but when he goes in there and paints him up and gets the detail and gets like the blood dripping off of him, like, you just got to take that guy and just like slam him on the board and say, all right, fuckers, we're going to fight. And then it kind of gives you like that extra little bit of, umph to like the game, and like just the amount of detail that goes into all the pieces really just pop. So that's a whole cool piece of it.
It's a lot of fun. I've started getting into that. I know Darby has too. My brother kind of introduced me to it. He's super into that stuff. He has like a whole Instagram account and kind of like a little side business. It's called Pro Touch Adventures, where he like does that kind of stuff to make a little extra money on the side, but also just as a cool hobby. But it is definitely something that like is enjoyable, and like that I personally find relaxing, and that you can sink a good amount of time into. But it really does like elevate some of those games when you take the time to like add the extra bits of detail and stuff, because some of those figures just come pretty plain, and it really just like makes it's it just takes it to another level. It like frees your mind up to imagine kind of other things, because now you've got this highly detailed character there, and your brain doesn't have to kind of do the horsepower work to like fill in the story behind who you're playing as, whether you're fighting or solving a mystery or something. But that is a really cool aspect of it that I've gotten into recently.
Yeah, it's it is nice to have that sort of on your own element of painting pieces and stuff. But yeah, the reason I asked about the online is because literally we're in a time period where it's pretty hard to interact with people who aren't living with you. So having those options out there is kind of a cool thing. I know some of especially the bigger board games tend to have apps now. So your Catan and Ticket to Ride, like you mentioned, Takedo has one. Pandemic, which just recently hit, of course, it got really huge again because of the sort of on the nose entertainment
the literal
factor
pandemic,
of it. The literal pandemic, yeah. So it is kind of cool that some of these have an online element. In fact, I saw the other day, Cards Against Humanity has created an online version of their game that they're releasing basically for free so that you can play while you're video chatting with your friends. So it's nice to have those social connections in an era that won't allow for it as much. So, Jared, now that we've talked about the great expanse of the games you own and enjoy, let's make it a little more difficult. Give us a couple of your favorite games now.
Yeah. That's like picking your favorite kid type of thing.
You obviously have a favorite kid, so don't lie to us. Tell us your favorite kid while you're at it, too.
Actually, it depends. It's whichever one that's not crying or talking back to me. The other one's my favorite kid, and that's the God's honest truth. The cop-out answer is it really depends on what you're feeling as far as the mood-wise, because there's a lot of different games. There's games that take like a half hour to play, and that's relatively short. Some games take 2, 3, 4 hours, and sometimes you're in the mood to playing with those. Obviously trying to find something like right in the middle is the kind of that sweet spot. I guess what you were saying before, like, hey, right now we're in a time where you got to play with the people that are in your house. So there's a game called Splendor.
Those bastards. I hate playing with them.
So, yeah. So like this game Splendor, it's a relatively simple game. You're buying cards with different colored chips and whatnot. My kids can play it. It's relatively simple rules. But it's very deep as far as like the different strategies involved and like how you can, use the cards as you pay for them with the chips and whatnot. So it's fairly complex as far as like the different ways that you can play it. So if you're playing with adults, right, you're going to play it a certain way, and then maybe like your kids can get in there and they can still compete with you. And like it makes it fun. And so like you're not playing like Snakes and Ladders or Monopoly or something like that, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna roll the dice, I'm gonna do this thing, or Candyland, I'll flip the card over and just kind of go through it. This actually gives them enough of a choice that they can play and feel like they're doing something, but also gives the adult in the game a little bit to chew on as well. So that one's obviously a big one that hits our table a lot, and it's fairly short, so it's good because sometimes 20 minutes is enough for a kid to play, but maybe if you're playing with a group of adults, you might want to cycle through and like get another game on the table, or hey, that's maybe like good enough for us for one night, and the rest of the night we're gonna like talk and socialize and whatnot. But if I'm with like my gamer friends, you can get a little bit deeper. Kalis is another game. It's like a classic worker placement game. What we mean by that is like you have workers that you put out on the board and they do things for you. That's a pretty classic game that I like to play. Tigris and Euphrates is another classic abstract game. It's kind of like tile laying, and you put stuff down. You can really screw with other people. You can put a tile down and like you're trying to connect different kingdoms and whatnot and really piss off people. So it's a little bit of a fun take that game. And really after that, like there's a plethora of games that spin off in those different directions. Ticket to Ride is a big favorite of course. I mean, I've never said no to a game of that. I've kind of played enough of those games to really, complete my lifetime in that. But if people want to sit down who've never played a game before or outside of like the basic, Target, Walmart style games, even though you can find that at Target now. But that's a really great game to kind of break into and start, getting into the hobby. And it can really just, even now you can sit down and play that game and you're like, okay, I definitely remember playing this card or trying to connect these routes and whatnot. So, but those are some of the favorites. What about you guys? Is there any favorites you guys like to play?
Yeah, Ticket to Ride. That's a great point because I believe that's the first game I learned to play as an adult when I joined the Beers and Board Games group, just because it was a great entry level game. But it also scales up as they have released. I guess they're extra releases. They're not really expansions. They're new versions of the game where they've added new rule sets and given you different locations. Because the original Ticket to Ride is America based. And then they've done other versions where you're like in Europe and such. So that's a good one. My personal favorite, especially as a short game, is Guillotine, which basically it's a card-based game where you're killing French nobles during the French Revolution, but in a sort of comic-y kind of way. Your goal is to collect the most points by beheading the most valuable nobles, but it doesn't feel like you're massacring real people. It's pretty quick. It works well for a group of people, and it's got good artwork on the cards. So that one's a lot of fun. For a longer game, I'm a big fan of Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which is survival horror kind of genre with some mysticism. So you play a group of people who go into a haunted house and have, various supernatural events occur to you, and you're collecting weapons and abilities and things. And at some point in the course of your wandering around the house, a bad thing happens and the game basically turns on its head as you have to shift to a new sort of goal to survive. It might be to escape the house or to kill the bad guy or something like that. But there are a lot of scenarios that are built into it, so it's got good replayability. I would say those are probably two of my preferred options. How about you, John?
One game that I think is pretty quick and easy to get into and that I really like it's called Unearth. It's a dice, mainly a dice game. So you are trying to collect sets of cards to build points, and the more cards you have for each set, the more points you get, obviously. But it's based on dice rolling, and so you can kind of compete for the same cards because you roll your dice and then you place your dice on the card you want to try to get, and you have to. The cumulative score of the dice on there have to reach a certain number before the card becomes claimed, but other people can also put their dice on there. And so then once the number is hit, you kind of have to figure out who has added the most points to the total is who claims the card. And there's some other strategies there, and where you can have ability cards that remove people's dice and lets you re-roll certain dice and things like that. But so it's pretty straightforward, but there's a good mix of luck and strategy in it. And it's got really gorgeous art too, of course. So that's one that I do own, and it's one that I got obsessed with at a trip to Gen Con. It's probably, I think it was 3 years ago, maybe now. And I pull that one out pretty frequently, especially when there's people who are relatively new to board gaming, because I think it's pretty easy to learn. And then otherwise, Catan is one that I go back to frequently, which I think probably a lot of people already know that one, even non-board game players. It seems to be the modern day Monopoly as far as cultural relevance and name recognition goes. That's like a big one that we play at like Zadar family Christmases. We'll pull that out and we'll play hours and hours of Catan, people kind of subbing in and out of games. So that's always a good go to, and it's relatively easy to understand also for people who are also still new to board games, which maybe there might be a lot of people trying to get into it now given all this time that we're spending at home. So those would be my two that I would recommend.
Yeah, and Catan's actually a game that has a crew connection, right? Because there was a period of time in the Ethan Finley era, I believe, where a lot of the guys were getting into that and playing it amongst the various players on the team.
Oh, really?
I can't. They did.
I must have missed that.
An
Yeah,
article,
it was like
or
back in
there was a podcast, I think that they talked about it. They had some pretty serious competitions going on.
Yeah, it was like 09, 10, 11. Like, 'cause I remember there was some pictures with Barcelotto playing it a few times with, I can't remember who it was, but yeah, it was definitely big like in that era, and then obviously probably cruising into the mid-teens as well. So
okay, nice. Yeah, I don't remember that, but that's pretty awesome. It's really spiked in like popularity, like to a huge level in just like the last 10 or so years. So that doesn't surprise me that there was an instance of them playing it and stuff. But yeah, those would be my two. The only other one that I would feel obligated to mention, which I always bring up whenever board game and crew stuff crosses, is this. It's a card game. It's called Zybrid. That's spelled XYBRID. And you basically are like kind of trying to build and assemble different monsters. Like the cards have different body parts on it. So like one card will have a head, and one card will have an arm, and one card will have a tail or feet or something. And you're trying to build different monsters, and each piece is like worth a certain amount of points, but also like has different abilities and stuff. And you're just trying to basically build the coolest looking monster that's also worth the most points. And I always bring it up because it was created by Gabe Schultz, who is a Columbus resident and big crew fan. Most of you probably know him as Astroheader, which is like his Twitter handle. Can't remember if that's also his handle on Instagram or not, but he designed and created the game mechanics and did the art and everything for this game. So it's a lot of fun. I've got a copy of it. My brother has a copy of it. I know a couple other people have copies of it. So if crew fans are ever looking for games, that is always one that I make sure to pimp because it's important for us to support our own. And it's just like straight up a really fucking cool game, even if it wasn't made by a crew fan. So definitely check that one out also.
yeah, and I think that's something cool that's about Columbus. It's kind of unique. I mean, there are definitely capitals of throughout that are big in the different board gaming, things like you said, Gen Con, obviously Indy. Columbus obviously has Origins, and we also have a Cabs here as well. That's a pretty big board gaming community. It just seems like Columbus has collected a lot of, different communities of board gaming. I think some of the more recent board gaming cafes first started here. Some of them, I think Tabletop in Worthington or Clintonville, actually. Sorry, probably offended O'Shaughnessy there, but
oh my god, he's so mad right now and has.
Yeah, but I mean,
he just got a rage boner and doesn't know why.
Yeah, but there's definitely like a larger community here for some reason, and I'm not sure, just because maybe we have just the right amount of winter, maybe that just forces people inside and okay, we got to do something. But yeah, that it definitely, I get the feeling that a lot more games get played around here than, maybe your typical average city. So chances are, if you're starting to get into the hobby, or maybe you're kind of like, hey, I'm trying to find some people to play with, there's probably a lot of people around you. You don't even know it. Go ahead and post something, or, go out on some, whatever your social media form is, and say, hey, who wants to play some games? Maybe not right now because of the whole 6 feet quarantine thing, but after this is all said and done, you can probably meet some new friends or that have the same interests as you, and typically you probably like a lot of the same other things too. So
yeah, nice. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the board game cafe thing is definitely like something that I feel like I heard about first here than even in like some bigger cities. Like my friends who live in LA, I don't think they said they didn't have any of those, and we already had a few of them. And like I know Kingmakers started here and has expanded to Indianapolis and maybe also Cleveland. I'm not sure, but yeah. It's I don't know what it is about Columbus, but seems to always be such a good community for that kind of stuff. I mean, and then you've got like the conventions also that are pretty well attended and well known.
Yeah, I think Origins probably really helps that, it really generates the local, obviously conventions over the country and around the world, but it gets people who are sort of maybe on the edge locally interested enough they'll support, and they'll go to a cafe or a game store, whatever. Because even beyond the cafes, we do have a good number of game shops kind of all over Columbus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely a hobby that is easy to get into and support and be like active in if you live in Columbus. So that's great.
Yeah, and like one thing that's cool is like even if you're kind of a average, hey, I kind of like just want to play a little bit, but there's always a game out there that if maybe you're whatever your other passion is in life, there's probably a game about, like maybe like coffee, right? There's so many games about coffee. There's so many games about this thing, or soccer, or if you're really into like Vikings or something like that. There's games on every single theme that's out there. So even if you're like, I kind of like board games, but I really like this other thing, you can probably cross those two hobbies together by playing a game. There's chances are there's a good game in all those things. So I definitely think that's kind of a cool way of bringing people into the hobby. It's like, hey, maybe you like gardening, right? So there's a game with farmers in it. So, okay, great. Let's go play that. So there's at least something that you can reach for and get a hold of. And so I might not know the game, but I know the concept of how to farm. So I can do these things, and I get a step into the right direction. And okay, the rest of it just falls into place naturally. So that's what's cool about games.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just like if it's something you want to try, find a game that's themed around something that you're already into and already like kind of knowledgeable about. That way you have a little bit less of a barrier to entry and feel a little bit more comfortable doing something that you haven't done before. That's a really great point. Are there any last questions that you have for Jared Darby, or is there anything that you feel like you want to say that we haven't necessarily asked you about?
I don't know. I feel like we covered things. So, Jared, if somebody were interested in learning more or wanted to talk about board games or whatever, where would they find you to ask you a question?
Well, the best way, I guess, is on Board Game Geek. My name on there is CrewFan. So just send me a message on there. Of course, the site itself is a little intimidating when you get on there. It's a lot of stuff going on, but once you kind of go through and create an account or something like that, that's the easiest way. I unfortunately don't have a Twitter account, or you can find me on Big Soccer, JairadBallerina. That's
you have the worst ways to contact you.
Yeah.
It's honestly impressive.
Hey, here's a great way.
Do you have an AOL account?
My CompuServe address is.
You could email acesradiopodcast@gmail.com and have me add you to the Slack. Which
you could do that.
And you could be part of the general conversation, and you could direct message with Jared about board games.
You can do that, yeah. And absolutely, those are some of like my favorite conversations. So absolutely, no matter what the question is, hit me up. It's a pretty passionate hobby of mine. So
nice.
Let's talk.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks for joining us and for sharing all your knowledge and info and just general passion for it. It sounds it definitely came across as something you're like super excited about, and it's always a good thing to talk about. So
I appreciate that you have a group-based kink. I'm a little disturbed that you involve your children in it, though. I'm not going to lie. How dare you, sir?
Only on the weekends. School nights are right out.
Oh my god. All right, guys. Well, with that, I think I've wrapped up another What's Your Kink segment here.
Nope, not yet. One more question.
Nope, Brent's decided to participate in the segment now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brent can actually hear now that Darby didn't break his phone. So a few years ago
how is it Darby's fault?
Get a goddamn computer, Brent. Jesus.
He sent a message on Slack, and ever since that message came through, it kicked my sound off, and I had to log out and back in. Stop messaging me while we're talking.
That's not how technology works.
Brent, if you would just own a computer, this wouldn't be an issue.
As we talked about last week, I own a laptop, just can't use it for this.
Yeah, it's a paperweight.
Anyway, back to the topic at hand. A few years ago on a little television show called Parks and Rec, a character made a board game called The Cones of Dunshire. Was that ever turned into like a real life game that you could buy? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm aware of the game. I'm sure somebody has came up with rules or like a print and play option of that. Print and play means basically they give you all the instructions and files online that you can print out yourself and do it. I'm sure somebody has done it. I don't believe like a commercial gaming company has actually made that game. I'm not a big Parks and Rec fan, but I know just enough about it to understand and I've seen that seen the episode too, but I don't think so.
I just did a quick Google search because I have a computer and so I can do multiple things at once, unlike Bront. And there is a Cones of Dunshire page on Board Game Geek, so I think that it looks like maybe it does exist.
Something's out there. We have to go
listed,
check it out.
The publisher is listed as Mayfair Games, which is a legitimate big publishing company. So,
wow, we'll have to go check it out. I'll have to go find out what's the rating on it. They have a scale of 1 to 10. So
8.8.
Wow, that's a pretty high rating.
Yeah.
Maybe some fanboys on that one, but that's okay. We'll check her out.
Right. Yeah, it looks interesting. It looks like there's some shots here of like an actual board with pieces and stuff. So I don't know. Interesting.
Brent coming through.
There you go, Bront. You can go pick up your favorite game from your favorite TV show.
Thank you for contributing, Brent, to everybody's kink.
Yeah, not a problem. I contribute to every show. I'm the only one that does.
Oh my god! All right, I'm done with
By the way, I muted the Slack, so you can't like mess with me anymore. I see that you were trying to do that.
Darby was trying to mess with you. Yes, I appreciate.
Hey, John, can you just kick Brent out of the stream?
Yeah, I absolutely actually can do that. Yeah. All right, let's call it there. Let's move on and get into segment 3 here in a second. But we'll take a quick break before we do that. Thanks again to Jared for coming and talking about board games. I think that was probably our longest kink segment so far, but it was super interesting, and you know a lot, and I think you definitely have the resource to go to if people want to get into board games during the quarantine. So hopefully some people reach out to you, and maybe we can put together like an ACES Radio board game night or something once we're all allowed to like be in the same area again.
Yeah,
that'd be
awesome.
Sweet. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Sure,
you bet.
All right, guys, stick around. We've got one last quick segment here for you this week. I think the hot takes are pretty short, so we are probably pretty close to the end here, but we will be returning. All right. Thank you once again to Jared for all of the board game info and knowledge sharing. He's going to hang around with us, I think, for the remainder of the show, so we will have an additional point to give out in the hot takes, which, speaking of, it's time to do that.
And that's a thing that I've actually been keeping track of.
Oh my God,
it's
Darby.
Current.
Thank you for finally doing what little bit you had to do.
You're very welcome.
I look forward to hearing those read. Let me just break down the way it's working again this year, just for everybody to keep in mind. We've changed it up. We're not reading all the hot takes anymore. We're only reading 4, and so it'll be the top 3 vote getters and then the bottom vote getter, which ironically are the only 4 people who've submitted things this week, which is just fucking great. First place point getter is going to get automatic 2 points. Second place gets 1 point. Third place doesn't get any points. Last place will have a point taken away from them. And then the 4 of us this week, since Jared's joining us, we'll each give 1 point to our favorite hot take. So your creativity matters more than ever. Your votes matter more than ever. So hopefully you've been getting on there and reading things and up voting or down voting as appropriate. Darby, I assume is going to have to read these again since Brent is on the phone again this week.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
But first, I will go ahead and give you the updated blood point standings for this point in the season.
Nothing is impossible. Make your dreams come true.
And now, an ACES Radio exclusive. The battle for the grand prize. Hot takes from the massive.
And you're not going to stop there. We got the grand prize.
Hot takes from Twitter.
He's heating up.
Hot takes from you.
Yes, you can.
This is what people tune in for, Darby. Finally,
right.
Finally,
yes.
People can start tuning back in.
Right. Alex Thomas, #rest, whom we have not heard from in several weeks, and we assume has died of a marijuana overdose at the age of 35. Alex Thomas, the Jack Park of ACES Radio.
Rest.
Yeah. Tied for first place this week, we have a 2-way tie. With 6 points, we have Not Charles and Free Da Penis. As Brent likes to say, he likes it when the D goes into the P. We also have a tie for 4th place, which would be 2nd place, but tied amongst 2 people who are behind 2 other people who are tied. Columbus Crew Eagle with 3 points, and My 6-8 also with 3 points. We then have a 2-way tie for 6th place at 2 points with You Missed C-Bus and we have a 3-way tie for what would be 9th place among AJS Attack, Yeah American, Darling Thief, all 1 point there, and technically with 0 points, but in the standings, because they have received votes, tied for 11th place are Lazy Kobe's and Grateful Cruiseman. So at this point, we have a pretty close race. It is literally anybody's game, so you should keep submitting hot takes and you should keep voting for hot takes because as it appears today, we have a whopping 4 hot takes. 2 of them are tied for first place and 2 of them are tied for last place. You sons of bitches, get in there and do things, because first place is a tie with 1 point and last place is a tie with 0 points. So you're clearly not doing this right, people.
Oh my gosh. Well, I like that it's closer. That's kind of what we were hoping to be a side effect of the format change. So
that is true. So amongst the first place ties, the tiebreaker for shortest hot take goes to username not Charles with an enormous single point, which just means you posted and nobody voted for you. Congratulations on that. Yes, you have a question, John.
On my screen, he does not have any points.
Oh, I just loaded this recently. Let me hit the refresh here just to see what's going on.
On my screen, they all have 0 points.
Well, that's not helpful. Oh, wait. So I just updated, and we do have a new leader in the standings for tonight.
Oh, my God.
User with 4 points. 4 points.
Wait, four people have voted in the last 30 seconds?
I don't know. I refreshed, and I'm sorting by top, and it says Ghost of Morgan Hughes with 4 points.
Jared, what are you doing? How many Reddit accounts do you have? Are you up voting?
Jonathan Mastiller voting for himself all over the place right now.
With these 4 mystery points.
With these 4 mystery points.
Okay.
By the way, Reddit sucks with their whole point. Every time I refresh, the points change. It's the dumbest fucking website ever. Anyway. Username Ghost of Morgan Hughes with 4 points. Quote, "Oh yeah, baby. Did you see all my jizz erupt from the ground like Old Faithful when Frankie capped the 3-1 victory yesterday? Hashtag rest. Hashtag boo. Hashtag it came from the ground because I'm in hell." Brent Miller, your thoughts?
It was a lot of fun reliving that game. I can't wait to relive the monsoon game because apparently that's really important.
Yeah, why is that the second game that they're choosing to show? There's so many good games in crew history, and they're like, let's show this really awful game that no one had a good time at, and that it wasn't could barely even be considered soccer.
Well, I like how they led with the one MLS Cup victory, so there's nothing else to do beyond that point.
Nothing of equivalent notoriety.
Yeah, there's no build up. You just, here's your moment of glory. It's all downhill from here. You're welcome. Yeah, I don't know why. I will say that the monsoon game was fun to watch. Being there, it'll probably be more fun watching from home and not being, soaked to the skin. But yeah, it's a little weird that that's the second game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tune in for that one personally.
Yeah,
it's especially weird when they said it was like special moments or significant games.
Right.
I don't understand how that qualifies.
I mean, it was the game that we learned what a bunch of whiny bitches Atlanta United fans are. So there's that.
I think we already knew that, though.
Yeah.
Hashtag suck my broccoli.
I just can
Oh yeah, that's the only time an usher has ever spoken to me about my language.
Suck my broccoli? What?
Yeah, that was the game. I was drunk as fuck, and we moved down to the lower deck because nobody was there, and there were some Atlanta United fans in front of us.
Yeah,
and I was adding my voice to the game, and eventually an usher came up and said, "Listen, I don't really care, but." They were complaining, so I started putting in vegetable names instead of the expletives. So it was like, suck my broccoli, eat my asparagus, that sort of thing. Yeah.
That was a weird game. At the 85th minute maybe, me and a couple buddies hopped over the little fence thing into an empty box just to sit and not be in the rain for 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. And some usher came and threatened to kick us out of the stadium if we didn't get out of the box. And then he followed us around the upper concourse for the rest of the game to make sure we didn't hop into any other ones. Really? There are 12 people here watching this game. All of the boxes are empty. We can't just stand in here for literally 3 minutes and try to avoid the rain a little bit? Jesus.
Yeah. And in the meantime, probably 5 people jumped into that same box once the security guard was following you around.
As soon as he left, yeah. Good God.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next one, Drabs?
Okay, so now we have a 3-way tie for second or last place, depending upon how you look at it. I prefer to think of it as a tie for last place. The least loser in this context, due to the brevity of their post, is username not Charles with 0 points. I forgot about this until the last minute. I just want to say I love you guys and hope you're staying safe. No, not you, Darby. Not you either, Bront. John Zidari, your thoughts?
I hate it.
Wait, you're the only one who got wished well.
Oh, I thought it was saying he wished none of us well.
No, he said, I hope you're staying safe.
Oh.
Not you, Darby. Not you, Bront.
Well, in that case, I love it. Thank you very much. not Charles. I appreciate you checking in with me. I hope you too are staying safe.
I should have let you stew in your ignorance and raccoon urine.
You should have.
But I should have.
Speaking of which, while we've been doing this show, my uncle dropped a trap off, and I'm going to catch that bitch tonight.
Sure you will, John. Where are you
John,
gonna put
you leave Storm alone.
Are you going to put a bag of $50 coffee in the trap to try and lure it in?
Son of a bitch. No, he already got one of those for me, okay? He's getting dried up old grapes.
He's not going to go for that. He's got better options in your pantry.
No, he's not. Fuck. God damn it. I'm going to leave him a family pack of Oreos.
Oh, shit.
Well, I'll post updates of that later. So yeah.
Okay, good. We've all been waiting. That's literally my only reason for living right now is to hear your raccoon updates.
All right. Well, they're coming soon.
All right. So our third place person, who's also tied for second and third and last with 0 points, username Tim Bezbachenko. Hey, Bezlords. I can't wait to see you again. I'm going crazy without you. Darby, I don't care you're obsessed sexually with horses. John, I don't care you talk shit about the FO on Twitter. Bront, I don't care that you're continually naked with a bucket on your head. I love each of you. Come back to me soon. Thanks, Tim. Jared, your thoughts?
Wow. That's that there's a lot to unpack in that hot take right there. So I'm not sure where to start.
You weren't paying a goddamn bit of attention, were you?
No, I was listening.
That's how I did my book reports in third grade. You son of a bitch.
Yeah, you sound like the president.
Drabs, how do you remember that far back?
I have a future.
I'm surprised they even had books when Darby was in school.
All right. So our final hot take of the evening, technically in last place, while tied for second, third, and last with 0 points, but dead last by virtue of being the longest with 0 points. Username Frida Penis. Quote, day 21 of hashtag Frida Penis quarantine. After listening to the newest episode of the up-and-coming ACES radio, it has come to my attention that Bront cannot diddle. Brother, you can only imagine hashtag sexy boy to wine being horny in only a certain amount of ways. I bet Drabby put his seductive horse pictures under lock and key, so let me come over and I'll hook you up with that blazing hot hashtag Wi-Fi. We can both go online and watch Zidar's boob Twitch stream. Hashtag free Zidar's boob. Hashtag crew home fap outs. Hashtag jerk the curve. John Zidar, your thoughts.
That second hashtag got me thinking, and I really think that once the league starts back up, we should have a promotion night called Fap Out the Galaxy.
No.
No, nobody wants to do that with me.
I did the so. I think it was today or yesterday. Zach Steffen used hashtag bend the curve. I don't think that's a thing, and that really sounds like you're just making a curved penis worse.
I think we can probably all just admit that Zach is probably just a stupid pretty boy.
I don't know. I want to think he's really smart because keeper requires some smarts, but I have not heard bend the curve before, and it really sounded more like something that was painful and your doctor would need to correct more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't want anything being bent or curved.
Yeah.
He has Peyronie's disease.
What the fuck is that? Pierogi disease?
No, go ahead, Brent. Why don't you go ahead and discuss Peyronie disease for us?
Oh, have you guys never seen this commercial?
Yeah, go ahead. Just keep talking, please. Please keep talking. I'm so excited about where this is going.
I don't watch commercials and haven't really for like a decade now because I have internet so I can stream things.
There are streaming services that have commercials, John.
Well, I don't pay for those ones. I pay the extra like $1 to not watch the commercials or whatever it is.
Brent, keep talking. Tell us more about these commercials.
The Peyronie disease, Brent.
Peyronie's disease is a condition in which the penis has a sharp bend.
Why do you know so much about this? Are you a sufferer?
Again, it's no, not at all. It is both a radio commercial and a television commercial.
About what? Like just raising awareness of bent dicks? Like,
I think there's a medication for it, but I'm not really sure.
I gotta say,
well, Brent, what does your doctor say when you ask about it?
I have literally never asked my doctor about that.
Or seen a doctor. I don't feel like a bent dick seems like something that can be fixed with medicine. That sounds like it needs a surgical procedure.
Brent, you are the expert here.
Brent,
you're going to have to say more.
What causes it, Brent?
Oh, I have absolutely no clue.
You say it, but I don't believe you.
How did you get it?
Again, it's just a commercial that was on the radio and the television.
And which you starred in. Okay, got it. Let's move on. Brent has a bent penis, and those were the hot takes. So we'll award our points here. Jared, are you there and ready to go? We can do you first.
Yes. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead with Frida Penis with the awesome hashtags there at the end. Inspiring promotions for future games is always a good thing. So yes, he gets my vote.
Love it. Okay, great. Bront, bent penis boy, bent penis bucket boy. What are you? Where's your vote going?
I'll give my point to Tim Bezbachenko. Pandering works.
Except he didn't pander to you.
Drabs, he said he loved us all.
And he said, not you, Bront. But
No,
it's
he
okay.
didn't.
I've
I thought
recorded
that was
your...
not Charles.
That was not Charles. You're confused.
Oh.
Tim said that he doesn't even care that Brent is naked.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Get it right, Drabs. You're old and your memory is fading.
That's true. I cannot deny that.
Some real unconditional love from Bezbachenko there. Okay. Darby, do you want to go?
Let's see. I'm gonna go with Ghost of Morgan Hughes. Just because a lot of people were on Twitter live tweeting and jizzing like crazy over the replay of MLS Cup, and that's such a bizarre thing to me. Like the concept that people were reacting to the game as it happened, except 12
years. Yeah.
It's just so bizarre. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to fan, but that's fucking stupid. So
I'm not going to tell you how to fan, but if you were fanning that way, it's fucking dumb.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to make it an even distribution of points here, I'm actually going to give mine to not Charles because he cares for me, and that what we have is special.
Pandering does pay out, as it turns out.
Sure does, Darby. Sure does.
And you already know, so let your head nod throughout the outro. Now as the curtains close and it's time to go, will the beast almost out like a manifesto? So let's make a toast to all the friends and fam, the folks involved since we started the jam, and to a world full of people who telling you what you can and can't do. Better recognize salty eyes ain't a thing, cause we realize that when we do it what we love, that's the grand prize.
Okay, well, that kind of brings us to the end here. We'll do the usual wrap-up stuff here, where we, of course, want to make sure that you guys are aware that if you want to join our Slack, we are offering that right now as something that you can sign up for and get access to. All you have to do is send us an email at acesradiopodcast@gmail.com, and we will get you added to that. We're keeping that open and available to everybody at least through to the end of this month, so the end of April, so that people have a place to kind of go and interact and just kind of communicate and and stay in touch with their friends and Aces, fellow Aces listeners. But we do plan for that to be a Patreon, but with things up in the air, we will add that back as a Patreon reward when it feels like it's appropriate. But for now, that's available to whoever wants it. Are we gonna keep soliciting potential topics for what's your kink segments, Darby? Is that what you were hoping to do, is continue to bring people on and chat, I think?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. If you've got a thing you want to come talk to us about and share what you're excited about and share with other people, that's definitely a thing that we're interested in. Again, this is a time where we don't have a lot of soccer things to talk about, so if you want to connect with people in other ways, shoot us a message and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll bring you on. It's actually super easy this way to get people on the show. So very simple process. So definitely hit us up if there's something you want to come and chat about. Otherwise, we'll figure something out between the three of us here. And so last but not least, then we're still asking you guys to toss us reviews wherever you listen to us, whether that's the Google Play Store or iTunes or wherever. Throw us reviews, helps us grow the audience and raise our visibility and just hopefully bring new people into the Aces Radio and crew family. And yeah, is there anything else you guys want to mention, Jared or Brent or Darby? Anything you guys want to pimp or shout outs you want to give?
Shit, I got nothing. I mean, it's quiet out there. Keep doing all of the good things that you're doing. Shelter in place. Walk on the proper side of the road if you're going outside. Check in on
on that, huh?
Yeah. Check in on your friends and family and loved ones. I've been trying every now and then to just send a text message to somebody you haven't texted in a while, just to keep those connections.
Or call people. I've been calling a bunch of people now. We've all got the time. There's nothing else going on. Have a quick phone call, even if it's just a 5-minute thing. It'll do you good to hear other people's voices and stuff. So, yeah, stay in touch. I'll give another shout out to Chris, to Steps FC. I hope you're doing well, man. I'm sorry to hear that you're sick and struggling with the whether it's the virus or whatever you've got going on. Get better soon. And if everybody wants to go and send him their well wishes, shoot him a message on Twitter. His handle is @Steps STEPS FC. I'm sure he'd probably appreciate that, and it's always nice to receive good messages when you're feeling down. So, okay, I think that brings us to our end, guys. Is there? Do you want to do the ACES sign off, or do you want to say one last farewell to the raccoon, Brent? Because it's gonna be gone by the next time we record.
John, we all know that you're not going to do anything to Storm. You love him too much.
I'm not gonna hurt him, but I'm certainly going to relocate him. So, all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in again. We will catch you all next week. Stay safe and healthy and sane.
This is the part where we whisper aces.
Yeah, do you want to do a little countdown, Darby?
What do I count down from? Do we go from 10, from 5, from 3?
3, 2, 1.
Aces. Oh, that was.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it on Brent's
countdown?
terms. No.
Well, I thought Brent was doing the countdown there.
Brent doesn't know how to count. That's the problem.
But I literally just did it, Darby.
That's true. He did just do it. I hate to take his side, but he's not wrong on this one.
Get some internet, Brent.
I have internet. It's what I'm using right now.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, this is it. Brent has to go and straighten his penis. We'll catch you all next week.
Baronies.
Nope, that's worse.